made many mistakes in my life, but that wasn't one of them.
Oh, but it was. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win, or you die. There is no middle ground.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones Season 8 prediction video. Today I want to talk about what I think the final scene of the Game of Thrones series could be. I briefly answered this in a Q&A video about 2 months ago, but I wanted to discuss it a little bit more. I actually have a few different ideas for what I think the very last scene might be. Before I go through some of these, I have to preface this by saying there is one thing you have to keep in mind. I have no idea how the show is going to end. All I can do is hopefully make some educated guesses. I think most of us are expecting to get a bittersweet ending because that's what we have been told by George R.R. Martin and Dan and Dave. But it doesn't mean the very last scene has to be bittersweet. I think we will lose many characters during the Great War, and that will be bitter because we have seen some of these characters come so far and put everything on the line in hopes of making Westeros a better place to live. But in the end, they may die for this cause. That could be the bitter part of the ending, but the last scene could be somewhat sweet. The series could end with a scene that gives us some form of hope. Even if Westeros is in ruins and some of our favorite characters are dead, the show could at least end with some promise for the future. This is what I'm trying to consider when predicting what I think the last scene could be, because I don't think the show is going to end with something too terrible happening. I think that will happen during the final battles, but not the final scene. The final book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series is going to be called A Dream of Spring, but it was going to be called A Time for Wolves, but George R.R. Martin changed it. To me, that does sound like there will be a glimmer of hope for whichever characters are left standing, who will take on the responsibility of restoring and rebuilding the Seven Kingdoms into a more civilized and prosperous place to live. Maybe I am being too optimistic, but that's how I always felt. Now let's get into a few different ideas that I have had for how I think the series could end. Just the final scene though, not the entire finale. I am just trying to picture the very last image before it fades to black and the credits roll. The first option I could see happening is the destruction of the Iron Throne.
1,000 blades, taken from the hands of Aegon's fallen enemies, forged in the fiery breath of Balerion the Dread.
There aren't 1,000 blades. There aren't even 200. I've counted.
Huh, I'm sure you have. Ugly old thing.
This has been a very popular theory for many years now, and I do believe there is a good chance this could be the very last thing we see. Over the course of this series, this throne has been the symbol of power and corruption. We have lost many beloved characters due to people fighting over who has the rightful claim to sit on the Iron Throne. And as of right now, there is no sign of Cersei having any plans of giving up her seat of power. But the Targaryens will have something to say about this. Daenerys Targaryen currently wants to break the wheel, and Jon Snow has no desire to sit on the Iron Throne, so I think it's very likely that one of them could have it destroyed, when and if they finally cast Cersei down. Out with the old and in with the new. If they truly want to make a difference and completely change the way things have been done for hundreds of years, they can start with destroying the throne. And as it's being broken apart or melted down by one of the dragons, the scene could fade to black, and we would know things are definitely about to change. Another option is the birth of the next Song of Ice and Fire.
I've forfeited the right to claim this soul. It's yours. It'd serve you well, and your children after you.
The series could end with Daenerys giving birth to her and Jon's child. This idea was kind of inspired by one of Grey Area's videos. She said history may repeat with the Tower of Joy scene. We could see this happen again, but instead it's Daenerys laying in a bed of blood, and Jon is getting handed his child, just as he was handed to Ned. I think that could be a beautiful scene if that happened, and it mirrored Jon's birth. But I want to take it a step further and say this could be the final scene. It doesn't have to be in a bed of blood or in a tower, but I think the series could end with Daenerys giving birth and Jon holding his child. And they could zoom in on the baby's eyes, just like they did with Jon, but it could zoom all the way into the baby's eye until it fades to black and the credits roll. I think they made it pretty clear with all the foreshadowing that Daenerys would get pregnant, even though she believes she can't. Since the last season is only 6 episodes long, she probably wouldn't have the child until the very end anyway. That would be a great last scene because it could end with us knowing that they will have an heir to follow in their footsteps and carry the torch for the future generations. Another way I could see this show ending is with the remaining Starks in Winterfell. One of the last scenes in Season 6 was of Jon and Sansa overlooking the battlements. And a very similar scene happened at the end of Season 7 also, but this time it was Arya and Sansa overlooking the battlements. Season 8 could end with all of the surviving Starks standing up here, reflecting and reminiscing about everything that they have been through, or talking about Ned, or possibly even what the future may hold for them. This series started in Winterfell, and I think it could end in Winterfell. It would only feel right if the show ends with the Starks, but that's just my opinion. If I were allowed to pick the final scene, there is only one thing I would ask for, and I bet some of you already know it. Those of you who have followed my channel for a while should know one of the things I am praying to see, and I'll give you a few seconds to guess what that is. I need to see the Stark's ancestral Valyrian steel sword put back together and placed in the hands of its rightful owners before the credits roll. When Tywin Lannister had this sword melted down and reforged, it was such a powerful scene and an emotional one for me. This was one of the symbols of House Stark and their power in the North, but watching it get melted down was absolutely heartbreaking. It was just another example of the Starks being broken and defeated. When this sword was melted down, it affected me just as much as some of the other character deaths did. I don't know why, but it just did. I think I hated knowing the Lannisters put their dirty hands on this steel, and then had the nerve to fashion it into their own style. But their reign is almost over, and both of these swords are about to be in the North at the same time. Now I know this is some major wishful thinking, but now that Brienne has one sword and she's guarding Sansa, and Jaime has the other sword and he's heading in this direction, I think there is a very good chance the Starks could end up in possession of their Valyrian steel again, after the wars are over. I know 2 swords are better than 1, but once the army of the dead are defeated, then they could hopefully restore ice to its former glory. And as the sword is being placed on a mantle above the fireplace, the camera can zoom out and fade to black. That would be very powerful in my opinion. Let me show you some thoughts some other people had about the ending, then I will get out of here and start working on a different video. I asked my Patreon supporters what they thought the final scene could be, and this is what some of them had to say. Kendrick said, "I think it will end where it began. I'm not entirely sure who it will be, but I think it will end with someone looking out over the wall. My guess is a Stark while they are rebuilding it." Steve said, "From all your predictions of who will be left, I think we will see Jon flying on a dragon after visiting each of the castles and new rulers, and ending up in Winterfell with all the remaining Starks at a feast, with Ghost at his feet, and Jon holding his new son, giving a last longing look at something that reminds him of Dany." Now this next one I'm about to read does have a potential spoiler in it, so please proceed with caution if you do not want to know any possible spoilers. Casey Lee says, "I think it'll be everyone going their separate ways. I love the leak video where the last shot is Jon with baby Lyanna and playing her a song on Rhaegar's harp. I'd love to see that, but I would be confused where he suddenly gained harp playing skills, though I guess it is in his blood." Those are some very interesting ideas that are just as likely to happen as anything I probably said. I want to thank those of you on Patreon who left me some of your input, and I want to thank everyone for stopping by to watch today's video. I always appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I love you all. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.